Welcome to this episode of Sunny's Silver Linings. Sunny's guest today is Dave Cava, business coach at Encore Strategic Consulting. Dave understands the importance of hiring the right people for your business and gives advice on what to look for during the hiring process. He talks about taking a long-term approach to talent and how to implement certain processes to help grow your business. And now, your host, the founder and CEO of IT by Design, Mr. Sunny Cava. Over to you, Sunny.
Dave, thank you so much for joining me today. I truly appreciate your time, and I'm super excited about our conversation today.
Me too. It is very much my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this all weekend.
And Dave, what I'm so excited about in this case is that you have so much experience as an MSP owner. You were the founder, you scaled that business to $10 million plus MSP. Not too many MSPs can scale to that level. And I remember back in the days when we were just MSP in New York City, and there is so much respect for you in the channel. You have been involved in the local, the user groups to peer groups, and you have contributed a lot to the channel. And you have that hands-on experience, and especially where MSPs are kind of really struggling nowadays is that talent, right? Talent strategies. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the problem has been always there for a small business as MSP, but with this COVID situation and everything happening around us, it's really, that problem is a lot more complex now, from hiring and recruiting and then scaling your business because you have the right talent and you have done a lot of research. But let's start with, Dave, if you can tell me a little bit about yourself. Share with my viewers, give me a little bit of, tell me a little bit about yourself, Dave.
Okay, well, technology was very much a second career for me. Yeah. Like a lot of other people, I was in my mid-20s and had tried some other things. I was actually in the ministry for a little while, and I decided that was not for me. And at 26, 27 years old, I was going, well, what do I do now? And I had always loved computers. I'd loved technology. I had built my own computers and stuff. And I said, well, I think I'm good at this. And if I can just get that first job, I'll be off and running. So I got my first job, like a lot of people got their first job in the late 90s. My father-in-law bribed one of his, he had a VAR, and he bribed one of the companies he was working with. And so I got this job, and I got paid $25 an hour, and my father-in-law got $5 an hour, and the IT manager got $10 an hour. And that's how I got my first job in technology. And I started off as an intern, but I was managing the help desk there within 9 months. And the way that came to be was that the people I worked with were brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant. But I figured out that I knew how to talk to the executives and I knew how to prioritize issues, and most of them didn't. And I said, these people are so much smarter than me, but I can figure out what's important and what we should be working on, and I can talk to management about it. So I said, I think I should probably steer my career towards management. And I went through a few .coms, wound up at a consulting company shortly after 9/11. And the consulting company's whole business had basically dried up because they were focused on project work and infrastructure work. And there wasn't a lot of that happening right after 9/11. So for years, people had said, do you do the network too? That's how they said it back then. And they had said, no, we don't do that. And now they had no other work. So they said, sure, we can do that, and they didn't really know how to do it. And they had 4 clients who were all ready to fire them by the time they made me manager of that group. I didn't understand that this group was supposed to make money. I just figured out after a month, I said, if this group doesn't start making money, they're just going to fire us all and shut this division down. And at the time, they called it virtual MIS. There was no such thing as an MSP in 2002. And long story short, by the time I left there 4.5 years later, There was almost $2 million in revenue in that group, and we had grown to 30 clients or so. And that company wasn't doing well, and it was time to leave. And that's when we started Proactive Technologies. Proactive Technologies exploded immediately because there was a lot of people that wanted to work with us that didn't particularly like the company we were coming out of, but like my partner and I. And we did $1.4 million in our first 8 months.
Wow.
So there was a whole lot of the best laid plans of mice and men in terms of us wanting to lay this firm foundation and use all the right tools and get all the right processes in place. And we got so bombed with work that it was just about getting to the work. And like many other, tech support companies, MSPs, it becomes about the tyranny of the urgent. And all that process and maturing stuff can wait a little while we make some money. But it leaves you problems to fix down the road, create some time bombs in your business. So we were around for 11 and a half years before we sold. About 4 years into that, we kind of started to convert to managed services, and eventually went to only selling all-you-can-eat managed services, most of the time including our platform. We were focused in financial services in New York City, which was a terrific vertical for us. And we were acquired by a larger company that did the same thing. And we did great with it. And it wasn't easy. And there was a lot of things we did right and a lot of things we did wrong. But in the end, it was a very successful venture. So.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So you were one of the most successful MSP here in New York City. And another great thing is that I think you were very progressive. We're a lot of people, a lot of MSPs, they were not even thinking about proactive work, right? And you kind of named your company as Proactive. Your first name was Proactive. And the customers that you served are the finance, where they kind of hold, their technology partner with very high standards. And when you talk about New York City customers in the finance vertical, that is probably the most demanding customer that you can serve. And the point is, if you can make it there and you are really advanced in your overall strategy, you can make it anywhere. And now you have been helping a lot of other businesses, especially MSPs, with your business advice, your coaching, and so you have been contributing to a lot of other people's success now.
Yeah, and I'm having a blast doing that. I always tell people, that I was born to be a teacher and accidentally wind up becoming an entrepreneur instead. So anytime I can help people learn things or help them along in their way in business, it's very gratifying for me. It's fun. So I love it. I love the coaching. I love the teaching and speaking, and it's just fun.
Yeah. Now, when you are doing now as a business coach for a lot of MSPs, and you were talking to me the other day, one of the peer group, and you were also facilitating that peer group, and now you have that MSP owner experience, right? So you've been there, done that, and now you are looking at things from an outsider's perspective when you are coaching them, and you talk about 4 types of MSP leaders. Can you talk to me about what are those 4 types?
Yeah, this is something that dawned on me pretty recently, and I said, I think this is pretty important and pretty easy to understand, and that's when I really get excited, because that's when it can transform things, when it's both important and easy to understand, right?
Yeah.
So the first one is, I call the player coach. This is the guy who leads the team, but also does the work with them. If you think about a lot of smaller MSPs, this is how it starts. Often the owner is in this role to begin with, where he's managing the people that he's hired or she has hired, but they're doing the work along with them. So I'm going to lead you guys, but I'm going to help you with the pile of work that needs to get done, and we're going to get it done together.
Mhm.
The next level I call the foreman or foreperson. And if you think about a construction site, usually the foreman is not picking up a hammer. The
Mhm.
foreman is walking around and making sure that everyone else is doing their job right, looking at the plans, making sure that things are built according to spec. And basically, the big difference in terms of MSP life here is that all this person is doing is managing a group of other people and making sure that the stack of work is getting done. And at some point, hopefully it's dawned on the owner or the person in this role that if this person is more focused on helping to do the work than oversee the doing of the work, that there's going to be an issue and other people, it's the whole inspect what you expect thing. Someone's got to be doing that continual inspecting. Now you'll see early on, and this is going to be a theme as we go through these, that someone that makes a good player coach doesn't necessarily make a good foreperson, right? Some people can't make that transition, that their first love is technology, and what they love about it is doing it, getting their hands dirty. They love banging the hammer, some people that make great player coaches won't make good fore people, right? The next one is the general, right? And generals are out in front. They're strategic. Sometimes when I teach, I use an illustration of General Patton, and I love it because there's a bunch of guys sitting in a tank, with a big artillery shooter thing in back of them, and there's people getting ready to fire that. And General Patton is standing off to the side, away from the Jeep, and in his hand is a pair of binoculars. Right? If you think about it, like General Patton's job is not to fire the gun, it's not to drive the Jeep, it's not even to stand there and tell other people what to do. It's to hold up those binoculars and see what is coming down the road and make a good plan for everyone else to follow. Right? This is a strategic role. And many companies never get to the point where they have a general. I think we'll talk a little more about that later, but somebody has to be watching the big picture and making a plan that fits in well and works and is executable within that big picture. So those were my three. And then the more I thought about it, I added a fourth. And I think the fourth is very important and a little off the radar sometimes. And that's what I've called the technical mentor. And if you look at these first three, people report up to them. And they are very much traditional leaders. The fourth one usually doesn't have anybody reporting to them. They don't have hire and fire ability, but this is the person that says, I know the right way to do things at this company. I have an advanced understanding of the technology and the processes, and I want to see everybody around me succeed. This isn't the coach, if to use the basketball metaphor, this isn't the coach, this is the point guard. Right? This is the guy that makes everybody around them better. You don't know how to do that? Let me help you.
Yeah.
You're a level one, stick with me. I'm going to make you a level two. Anytime you get stuck, you let me know. I'll stay a half hour after work with you. And work through what you got stuck on. Very important person, very others-minded person. And sometimes in companies, you get the highest level technical person actually has the opposite attitude. Why do these people are beneath me? Their work is beneath me. They hold up their nose at those around them. And I often hear from business owners, this is a very common problem where they go, I've got this guy, he's got an attitude. It's definitely a culture problem, but he's so good at what he does and so important to all my clients. And I'll say, well, fire him now because you're going to fire him eventually, and you might as well rip the band-aid off because this person is going to stunt your organization from ever being healthy. So that's the fourth one, technical mentor.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think there's one question I'm going to hold on to this question is, partners that I work with personally, and I see that, and I have made those mistakes in the beginning when we were a startup, 5, 10, 15 people MSP, that sometimes you think that your technical person, like technical mentor that you talk about, they're so good at technology. They're so good at institutional knowledge because they have been with you from a long time. And you kind of end up promoting them to like more of other roles, leadership roles. And then you kind of really, everyone is doing it with the best interest of having people kind of grow from within, taking people along with you. But sometimes that type of promotion, that type of role given to that person, it may not work well. And I see a lot of us making that type of mistake where a good technical person is given a position where a totally different set of skills, different mindset is required, and we end up kind of really putting that position, we're not setting up that person for success, even though the intent is that. So I'm going to come back to that. But can you talk to me a little bit about the key difference between these four types? So you have given us very high level, and I really want to really understand the difference between the player coaches and the other three categories that you have. What is the key difference in the interest of helping our partners understand that, and also how to identify that potential and be able to then position them correctly?
Yeah. Let me go back to what you just said in terms of, because someone is strong technically and competent at their job, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to make a good leader, right? That's the whole Peter principle thing, that everyone will get promoted until they're in a position they're incompetent to do. That's the way, the natural way the world works. But we see this very often, like where someone is very strong technically, but they have no leadership skills at all. But because they are so proficient technically, somebody says, well, obviously they need to run things because they're better technically than anyone else, and sometimes that's a big mistake. The difference between these four, if you look at it, the player coach is immersed in the daily tactical day-to-day work, right? And helping to do it, right? Very much to go back to the metaphor, using the hammer all day long, right? The four-person is still immersed in the day-to-day work, but not picking up the hammer. And to me, if you were to look at kind of the typical where a four-person fits perfectly, if you have a help desk, this is your help desk manager or your service manager. Let's say they have a team of 6 or 8 people. Their whole job is to make sure that these 6 or 8 people are productive every day. They're using their time wisely. They're getting to the work that needs to be done in the correct order it needs to be done in. And as long as the customers are happy, all the work got done, all the employees they oversee were efficient, that person has done their job. Their job is not to say, well, we should be using XYZ software package, or maybe this can be done with some AI, or we've priced our offering incorrectly, or perhaps we should focus on a particular vertical. They're not doing any of those things. Someone else is saying, here's the pile of work, don't worry about where it came from or what it costs. Your whole job is to use this team to get this pile of work done. But that leaves a gaping hole in terms of the business, because somebody has to determine, what tools we should be using, what's going on, how to price in the market that we're in, how to bundle things together, if we should have a particular vertical focus or a particular technology focus, become SharePoint experts or something like that. Those decisions need to be made at a higher level usually. And what you'll find is in order to do any of these roles well, you can't, and this is a theme we may come back to, you can't be all of these things, right? You cannot be a great general and be a great four-person, right? They're both full-time jobs. Where MSPs can get stuck is when the owner says, okay, I'm going to start as a player coach, I'm going to try and move on to foreman, but I'm still going to be the player coach too. And I'm going to try and move on to general, but I'm still going to be the foreman and the player coach. And then you just wind up with a big muddled mess because the owner can't get out of his or her own way. You know?
Yeah, and I see this. I see this situation more often than I want to see when you talk to many different small businesses. And I mean, it's a common challenge, right? And a lot of MSP businesses are started by people where they have that technology know-how knowledge. Mm-hmm. And now they're trying to scale their business, and they didn't go to school, or no one wakes up one morning. They didn't go to school, first of all, for MBA and other stuff. But then, not too many people will wake up in the morning and say, okay, this MSP business is so sexy, and I'm going to start this business because this is the most kind of
they got out of Wharton and decided MSP is the thing for me.
Yeah. So a lot of people have that technology background, or you mentioned accidental entrepreneurs, where just something happens or triggers, and that kind of helps that business start consulting and other things, and that becomes a business. And I want to go to that piece where you discussed, the biggest obstacle, right? Owner gets in his own way. And so can you talk to me a little bit about that obstacle, that the biggest obstacle that you mentioned is that to go to the next level?
Right. There's an exercise I like to go through with the smaller MSPs I work with, and I like to do it before they're even clients sometimes, where I'll say, well, what's your job at your company? And they'll say, well, I'm the owner. I say, well, there's plenty of owners that own businesses that don't work in the business at all. So that's not really your job. What is your job? Well, I'm the CEO or I'm the president. And I say, hey, you have a 4-person company. Your company doesn't really have a CEO or a president. And I'll say, there's a lot of jobs being done in your company, and hear me out here, Mr. Business Owner. When you start a company, even if you're just one person, you need a level 1 tech, you need a level 2 tech, you need a level 3 engineer, you need a bookkeeper, you need an HR person, you need a recruiter, you need a salesperson, you need a sales manager, you need a project manager, you need a procurement person, and I'll just keep going, and I'll go, how many of those things are your job? And usually they go, oh, all of them or most of them, and I'll say, that's right. That's your job. Your job is all of those things. And if a business is going to mature, a massive part of a business successfully maturing, an MSP successfully maturing, is starting to get the owner's names out of those boxes. Okay, now I have a level 1 tech. That's no longer my job. That's usually the first one to go. Okay. Now I have an admin person. I'm no longer picking up the phones every day. That's no longer my job. Okay. Now I have a bookkeeper. Now I only have 7 jobs. Right. So as time goes by, I advocate for a combination of hiring, training from within, and outsourcing. Right. You start to get the owner's name out of those different boxes and narrow the role down. And I would even argue to the point that says your company doesn't really have a president or a CEO until the owner's name is out of all of those boxes. Sometimes I was not a great example there. I was the COO/CFO until we sold the company. There's no way my company could have kept maturing if I would have kept my name in those 2 boxes. My partner was in charge of sales, and he also functioned as our CTO. He made the big picture technology decisions. All 4 of those roles, his 2, my 2, very important. But if we were to keep growing and kind of go into what ConnectWise is calling that empire building phase, you can't have people at the top continue to have other roles. So what you see sometimes in an MSP, you see it more often than sometimes, I see MSPs that are moderately successful. And by the standards of the world, they've been very successful. Some of them have built $4 or $5 million businesses, but the owner still has his hands in everything, right? Oh, you know how to do that. I'll just take care of it. Like, don't do it that way. Do it this way. The still wearing all kinds of hats, and the maturation and the of the company is just completely stalled out because the owner can't let things alone, is failing to delegate, is failing to empower the people around him or her, and you can see that the people have become discouraged. The company is full of yes men, yes women, because no one else will stick around. And the owner is wondering what went wrong, but they don't really like taking advice because they've been so successful to date. They go, why should I listen to you? I built a $5 million company, and I see this regularly. And it's so much easier now as a consultant to look into someone else's company and be able to see this dynamic crystal clear than it was to see it in my own and do something about it. Much easier to diagnose other people's problems than your own. That's why working with a coach or a peer group is important,
Yeah. So let's stay there for a minute. So as you mentioned, we start with one L1 or admin. We take our name out of that box, then the second box, then the third box. And the company starts growing and maturing up. In the beginning, during the startup phase that I call it, is whatever it takes, right, to survive, because 60-70% businesses fail within the first 2 to 5 years. And it's a survival kind of really, the most important thing for that startup owner is to survive and be the top 20-30% businesses that kind of survive. So when you get out of that phase and you are kind of, you have your name still in some boxes, you don't have resources to delegate everything, but you want to get there. And I call it like more of self-sustaining company where your functions, your key, in any business, Dave, as you know, someone is building, then someone is selling that, someone is supporting it, and someone is billing that. These are the 4 or 5 major areas of any business. And when you talk about these functions, how can you have one person at least where that person, rather than you kind of doing the mechanical and strategy and all that type of work in that function, you have one person who is doing that, and it's like making your departments, your functions self-managed. So that I call self-sustaining. Now let's go from that $5 to $7 million MSP where they are committed. Their mindset is growth, and they want to make their department self-managed, self-sustaining. What is your advice for them to go from that to the next level? And next level for them is to be in just one box, which is called CEO, or in EOS is called visionary. Scaling up will call probably something else. But at the end of the day, you are not working in the business, you're working on the business, and you have freed yourself up to a level where that is your number one job. So what is your advice for MSPs where they are willing to and committed to get there, and what can they do to get there?
Well, the way I always start with a company in that situation is to say, show me your org chart, right? And if I start seeing dotted lines or 15 people reporting to one person, like, I know that there are things to fix, and you have to get healthy before you can grow. You have to get unstuck before you can grow. So I look at the structure of the company and the management, and you get that healthy, and then you can start to grow. But it's always about, Mike McCallum has a book called Fixed This Next, and it's a real good book. But even if you never pick up the book, it's just a brilliant title. If you have a diagnosis of your business and just figure out, this is the next thing or two I'm going to work on. I'm not going to try and do 30 things at once. I'm the owner of a $7 million company. I shouldn't be doing the invoicing anymore. I'm going to fix that next, and get myself out of that and get it running effectively and smoothly, and and then I'll tackle the next thing after that. So there's this kind of getting the diagnosis right, getting the big picture straight, understanding the problems on your org chart, which will often take the eyes of a third party to do, right? And then just saying, okay, we're going to tackle this, then we're going to tackle that. I mean, I can tell you in my business, there was a number of times where we just said, this has become the biggest problem. This is what we're going to attack now. Once we lick that, we'll work on other things. You alluded to it. I like to talk about the four legs of the table, right? You got service, operations, finance, and sales, right? And they have to mature in parallel.
Yeah.
Right. So you're always only going to be as good as your weakest link, and that is true of all areas of your organization. Figure out what the big picture looks like in terms of where you're going, and then you fix the weakest link, and then you go to the next weakest link, and then you go to the next weakest link, and that's how you move on.
Yeah, and I love that four example of like four.
If you have one leg that's shorter than the other three, you can have three really healthy legs on your table. Your table is not going to work well, right?
Yeah, it's not stable. You can't put anything on. If you even put your food there, it's going to drop.
Yeah.
And same thing with the four wheels of a vehicle, that you need that kind of little bit of balance there. Otherwise, you're not.
Your tire pressure is 38 on three of them and 32 on the fourth. Guess which one you work on? Like the one that's a little flat.
Flat. And unless you need a tow truck. Yeah. So Dave, you have been there as a business owner, right? So once we have that awareness and understanding that you talk about, what good looks like, and you're trying to manage to that good. But you as a business owner probably appreciate this question that because being an advisor or just coach is one thing, but when you're doing things as a business owner, it's a lot more kind of that you want to do it in terms of moving out of your day-to-day stuff, and you want to focus there. And a common scenario that gets created is that you have a function that's working well. You think, okay, I have this really figured out. This is a well-oiled machine now. Let me move to the next. Let me move to the next. By the time you get to the third or fourth, then the one that you're not paying attention to, now that one is you're back there. So I have seen it personally myself, that you fix one thing and you move on to the next thing, and then there is that the probability of you coming back to the same function there, because you have to step in some situations, and that is the practical kind of the reality of entrepreneurial world that I see around me as well. So what do you have? Have you gained any insights during your hands-on entrepreneurial work, or now when you are coaching a lot of other people, that what most successful entrepreneurs do, where they're able to anchor that change? They get it done once, they move on, they make something well-oiled, and then it's well-anchored. That change that you brought in is well-anchored, and where it's self-managed for long-term.
There's no magic. It's about people and process, right? Get the process right, get the people right, and hopefully the changes will stick a lot better. When businesses are immature, we forget about the process part, right? And we think getting the right person in the right position will plug the hole. We're much more dependent on superheroes, right? And then as a business gets more mature, mature doesn't necessarily mean old. You have businesses that are 30 years old in this industry that are not running in very mature ways, and you have businesses that are 3 years old in this industry that are pretty advanced in terms of their processes and procedures. But early on in the maturity continuum, we figure just get a really competent, really hardworking person, and sick them on that problem, and then we'll be okay. The problem is that we become so dependent on individual personalities, and eventually some of them don't work out as well, or some of them leave, and then we're right back at square one, all right? So the idea over time is to lessen the dependence on superheroes and trade it for dependence on super processes, right? And to make a really simple example, I talk about, kind of a phase one of maturity, where how is the quality of your service desk when someone calls with, say, a virus problem, right? In phase one, it all depends on who picks up the phone, right? The quality might be great if Susie picks up the phone. It might be terrible if Joe picks up the phone. And what are people going to think of your company? Well, it depends on who they got on the phone. Yeah. Right. You want to move all the way to a place of maturity where it doesn't matter who picks up the phone, because everybody knows what to do when that kind of issue crops up. There's a standardized process. Everyone handles things the same way. It's a best-in-class vetted process that has been developed over time and tested and tweaked. And every single time that issue comes up, it's going to be handled in a highly competent, customer service friendly way. So, I mean, that's a simple example, but you see stuff like that all over your company. I know. I'll give you another practical example. Yeah. As my company got to be 7 or 8 million, and we were doing, of course, lots and lots of PC builds, laptop builds, desktop builds, and for years we did them the way everyone else did. When a build needed to get done, it got assigned to a tech on that account, and the tech did that build. And we had checklists and things like that, like most people develop, but inevitably, no one would follow the checklist perfectly. Everybody would do things a little different. We're paying, in many cases, expensive field techs to build PCs, and they're not even getting done great. So we hired one level 2 tech, paid them a fairly modest salary, and this person is now our PC builder. And they make images for the different models that we sell. They keep those images up to date. Everything is built fully to spec, and we're paying less money to have a job done better. And what has improved is not our people, it's our process, right? And that needs to happen as companies grow.
And that's so true. And even when in a day-to-day life, Dave, where we see businesses where no matter where you go for that business in terms of their branch office or their branch location, it could be Starbucks, it could be any other major chain, and your experience is going to be almost the same, right? Because it's built upon that process standardization, that your experience is going to come from the process. And people are well trained to follow that process, right? It could be Starbucks, it could be Chick-fil-A, it could be, right? So you're gonna hear that.
Dunkin' Donuts, I swear, Dunkin' Donuts, like it's totally random. I mean, they gotta work on their process a little, because I've had some of my best cups of coffee ever there, and I've had some of my worst cups of coffee ever there. They Dunkin' Donuts has got the randomizer when you get a cup of coffee. Exactly. You nailed it.
Yeah. So so you have when we used to go to the user group, and I heard you speaking sometimes about the standard solution stack, standard processes, my company way of doing things, and that's so true. And one another thing that I kind of what you mentioned in the beginning, that your company's leadership must evolve all the time. And because, like what I was saying earlier, if your department standard process to people that you put in a position to handle that department, they are best in class for today, but as your company grow, they need to evolve, to your point. If they don't evolve their processes, then your second point that was that what brought you here is not going to take you to the next level. So they are probably the best in class process and people for today, but if that continuous evolution is not there, that continuous transformation is not there, then they may not be best in class when the organization comes here, because
Yeah.
the role will outgrow them, or the department or the overall company will outgrow them, or the process will outgrow that what works at that level. And
Right.
I love that piece, because at the end of the day, is that transformation, is that continuous evolution of people and processes as the company is evolving. And if people are not moving at the same speed, then that, somewhere is going to kind of really come back and hurt you and hurt the organization. And
Can I tell you about a painful phase my company went through?
yes,
So, I had started to learn about the various plateaus in MSPs, and probably the most common one I call 10 guys and an owner, right? Where you've basically got 7 or 8 techs, maybe you've got someone routing traffic, and you've got an administrator or a bookkeeper or administrator/bookkeeper. And a lot of times businesses just stay there because that can be a really wonderful lifestyle business. You build that up to, say between $1.5 million, $2.5 million. You take home a good percentage every year and you get to go on vacation, and that can be a nice lifestyle business, right? But in order to get any bigger, you really have to introduce some other management, and there's some growing pains there, right? So my company got up to about 22, 23 people and $2.5 million. And I'm thinking we're way past all that, right?
yeah,
And then it dawned on me that just like, no, we have two 50-50 owners. All we are is the 10 guys in an owner company with 2 owners. That everything was flat. There was no middle management. And the company was essentially stuck because the people we could not effectively manage the people we had, and we certainly couldn't manage more people than we had. We had to start introducing real middle management that had higher fire capabilities. That was going to be difficult and painful, but we did it because we had to do it, right? So when we did it, we had all these employees who had been with us from the beginning or close to it, who had only ever reported to an owner, who were not used to working with a lot of processes, who were kind of very competent people, used to doing the things the way that they're used to doing them, not used to really answering to anyone else, and certainly not looking to answer to someone that being brought in when they'd reported to an owner for 5 years. So here we have this group of, we'll call them the superheroes, right? Who have been the people that have gotten us to be a successful multi-million-dollar company, but they don't want anyone to really manage them. And they don't really want to hear about the processes that you're trying to implement, right? So these people, when we talk about what got you here won't get you there, these people either need to evolve, or they need to we called it manage them. We need to manage them out of the company. And that means that you begin to stop rewarding bad behavior. You begin to put more accountability in place. You begin to basically stop letting the inmates run the asylum. And I think in most cases, you'll have a small percentage of people in that situation who will understand what's happening and get with the program and kind of grow with the company to the next level. And most of them will eventually leave. In our case, many of them just eventually left the company, and we fired a few. And that was extremely painful because on a personal level, those people had been with me in the trenches, and we loved them. And I still consider them my friends. I hope they consider me their friend, but it wasn't working for the business anymore. And it was change or move on.
Yeah. And we as entrepreneurs, we as leaders, I think that's a very common scenario that we face. And thank you for sharing, like that's It's a common problem, and every leader, every owner, I see themselves facing this, where you have really committed people, loyal people, where they have been there, done that. I mean, they have been with you, and you together brought this company to this level, but now is that you're stalled at this level, right? And some people will get the idea of going to the next level and be open to change, embrace that change, and some people won't. And in those situations, we got to make those painful decisions in the interest of the greater good, that company where a lot of families are associated with that. But it's a very common scenario to deal with. Now, Dave, one thing, I know this is going to be a bonus kind of takeaway for my viewers. My friend, you have done so much research on talent. You have done so much research on recruitment and like recruitment strategies and talent strategies in general. So my question is, because that is the need of the hour for every single business out there with less than 1.5% unemployment rate, every single person that I talk to, they're struggling to hire. So what is the number one advice that you have for our MSP friends in terms of hiring and recruitment?
Wow. Well, if you ever want to have me back, I could talk about this for an hour really easily. But let me get down to one point. If I had to, I could give you 27 points. But if I had to boil it down to one point, I am working on a workshop, that is all about talent and hiring and recruitment, and it's called Built Not Bought. And if I had to boil it down to one thing, it's definitely that the most successful MSPs, the ones that are exponentially successful, I found in my research that the biggest differentiator between those MSPs and everyone else is that they build their staffs. They don't go out to the free agent market. They are excellent at entry-level hiring. They get the best raw talent. They draft well. They train well. They promote from within more than anyone else. They see it as, and I guess the takeaway is for business owners and business management, seeing the development of your staff and starting it right at the entry level, long term is probably the most important thing you can do for the success of your business. And it's something that very few MSPs do. I've been, part of what I've been doing is helping some companies out with recruitment. And, it's very typical for them to go, well, I need a level 3 engineer. And I'm like, yeah, so did the guy I talked to 2 hours ago and the guy I talked to 2 hours before that. And I'm, we'll try and find them, but the whole idea of, I need someone that's going to be a perfect culture fit, who's as technically proficient as my strongest technical person, which happens to be me, the owner, and I want to pay them $70,000 a year. Is just like, I start to be like, we're going to do our best for you here, but you may be looking at the albino unicorn syndrome, like there aren't a lot of albino unicorns around waiting to do your bidding. So I really think taking a long-term approach to talent and developing from within inside and investing in that area is kind of some secret sauce that most MSPs just don't do. They don't know about. It's not on their radar. We have an industry that is largely driven by software development companies. We're trained to think that every problem in an MSP can be solved with the right package of software because we go to conferences and we're presented with, 50 different software packages, and they're wonderful. And they've helped to advance the maturity of this whole industry in an unbelievably rapid way, but it doesn't replace the people component. The people component has to go alongside it. And thinking that you can grow, and then just go out and grab whoever you need, and it's going to succeed and they're going to be easy to find is naive, and it's bad planning.
Yeah, you're right with all those conferences, except one conference where the focus is always building. I mean, education and building your people. And
You know what? Like I will. If I didn't agree with you, I'd just keep my mouth shut. But the great thing about Build It is that you got all the software vendors and all the exposure to all the tools, but you got a level of focus on personnel and people and leadership that is pretty rare out there in the conference circuit. I mean, I was genuinely blown away by the quality of that conference and that it was that comprehensive, that it really wasn't one or the other, and it didn't feel like you were drinking from a fire hose. I left impressed and inspired, honestly.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Thank you. No, it's I love the way you said it in terms of taking that L3 approach of not from hiring from outside, but of taking that approach of building your people from within, and more focus on learning and development and trainings. That is so awesome. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts. Very valuable insights, Dave. And what I loved about this conversation is it's more hands-on knowledge that you have gained and experience that you have gained as an entrepreneur, as a leader, someone who has built this business to a $10 million plus company. So that is a lot more meaningful. It's easy to absorb and apply this knowledge because it's very practical. And thank you so much for coming and joining me today.
I want to sincerely thank you for the opportunity. I had a blast and consider it a privilege. So thank you.